On a sunny day, the city comes to life. Cars hurriedly maneuver the roads, and people are in a hurry to do their business. Junjun's thoughts scatter. It does not look from the Nazengan, which looks a little painful. He looks at is located in the countryside, though he seems to be a city boy. It impresses how quickly after the transfer he became a prince of the school. The teacher notices 9th of May. Meanwhile, Sona cannot concentrate, and he calls the student to the board to solve the problem. The student confesses that he does not know how to do it. What annoys the teacher? The teacher emphasizes that they are already lagging behind. He tries but just stuck, stutters and sweats. Now Sunggun does not seem, saying that he has not yet fully woke up after a nap. The teacher loses patience and turns to Yunjin Yon. She sighs, rolls her eyes, but goes to the board. After a few movements, the chalk of Yunjin Yon finished. The teacher was amazed, though she thought she did not listen. It turns out that the best student in the classroom has shown herself again. However, Yoon does not feel pleasure in praise. She understands that her success is only related to the fact that the school is small and not prestigious enough. The teacher feels smartly. He begins to reproach Nasungun for a frivolous attitude to learning and asks whether his defeat from the girl. Behind the classroom is a loud explosion. Everyone shuddered, even a teacher. Then the culprit with a huge yawn makes it clear that the lesson is over. The teacher is aware of this. The students instantly start collecting their things. The teacher shouts angrily at Kwamea Boyomjin for disrespect, emphasizing that he only decides when the lesson ends. Turns petals with a buckle on the belt. The teacher boils from anger but eventually completes the lesson. It reminds everyone of the importance of homework. He tries to apologize to Yoon Jin-yeon for the previously incident. However, she only replies that he goes away. He really needs a toilet, so he goes away. She listens to how a classmate discusses her with Na Sung-gun. The girl warns him not to contact John, saying she will only pull him down. It changes the topic of conversation, noting the wonderful weather and plans for the weekend, feeling mixed through gossip. She is in a hurry to be a crowded corridor, delving into her thoughts. She reflects on her. With the onset of the evening, the mountains are immersed in the dark. I see how you climb the mountains instead of nap. She says her home is not suitable for study, so she usually stays at school. However, evil views and ridicule of classmates scared it. So she was in this ancient building among the mountains, an old house when she wandered in search of rest after her drunken mother hit her. Here, so quietly as if in the daytime, ideal for textbooks. Looking through the window, it is surprised because the furniture looks new enough. Someone apparently has recently visited. It is going to use the key, but notices that the door is already open. Its small size, given the hope for an empty house, results in Hwan Byum-jeans rotates when it comes in. It takes a place at the table. Unpleasant rumors are spreading in the city, but it does not seem to bother him. He later asks if she would like to eat the ronks. He notes that it has already got it, and she is wondering if she wants eggs. At this point, she is finally aware of who she is near. By the end, she heard everything about Kwan Am-jin. He was said to have lost his parents early and then lived with different relatives. Rumors spread that he beat the teacher in an old school and was kicked out for it. Some stories were even more creepy and hinted that, although they never communicated in high school, even being in one class, they could remain strangers forever. But everything changed about a week after they started using the composition. One day during her studies, she hears noise and looks around. On the second floor, he notices a spooky figure. Hwan Beon-jen looks closely at her. He shouted loudly. Continuing from the previous moment, she apologizes for the invasion as if prey before a predator. He seems to be crazy descending the stairs. Her thoughts sound louder than the heartbeat because she reproaches for herself in his home. Among all possible places, suddenly the demon says it is not his house, and adding that no one went to the house for a month, except for her, of course. She is aware that it's empty. As you know, curiosity can even lose a cat. She dared to ask him about cases with a deputy. He now points out that he is sleeping, but is also interested in her opinion. When she makes a dissatisfied facial expression that he does not like, although she denies his remark, returns to his place of rest, encouraging her to continue classes. It remains stunned, trying to comprehend the whole drama. Before he closed her eyes, she wanted to call him, but stopped, thinking about the situation. Competing with the choice to go or stay in particular, given its unstable past. At the same time, she carefully considers her capabilities, admiring the beauty of this study room, and at the same time, she wants her to find this house earlier than him. After all, he has no reason to consider him his own. Isn't it? Deciding to find the answers, she climbed to the second floor and looked carefully at his peaceful face. She wondered if he was sleeping, because what happened next was unexpected. She says something about the discovery of her soul, but looks quite surprised by her courage. She awkwardly balances on the handrails, almost not breaking down. And so he catches her for his wrist, sharply attracts to himself, pressing it to the breast. His hands gently hug her, giving a sense of protection. She whispers in her ear to be careful because the ceiling is too low. She notices his hand in her back. She does not notice the signs of danger when he repels him with all his strength, screaming to leave. He expresses indignation because of her unfair attitude. He acknowledges that she saw her studying yesterday. He immediately realized that she even seeing only behind. She is surprised how he was able to recognize her behind her back. But then he explains everything. However, she continues to think about this opportunity. Dependence. In addition, he warns, if her plans are aimed at going out through the rainy move, he pushes it through the front door. Judging by the last 48 hours, her plans seem to be more focused around the table. This pushes him to offer coexistence. He explains that they mutually need each other to achieve their different goals. This makes the coexistence possible because they will not interfere with each other. Then his home. But suddenly he asks her question. The usual picture of her home was lightning in her memory. She drives this opinion. Interestingly, what difficulties he is experiencing, because everyone has their own battles with internal demons, to avoid problems that may occur during hiking through meetings with strangers. And suddenly there is a need for a youthful confrontation with her decision. But he calmed her tumultuous thoughts. Reminds me. He then sent her back to the training place. Stress from the drama presses on it when it descends the stairs. Her thoughts are raging. Is the worst decision in her life? Or perhaps the best? This gives a great opportunity to officially introduce. Although he is absolutely terrible in training, his name is remembered by everyone. Well, she has no choice. To put up with a new reality, it is forced to divide a neglected room with those who are considered a local bully. The difference between them is obvious. Kwanbeumjin lives on the second floor and it lives on the first. However, this does not reflect their school relationships because they just pass each other without saying a word. Both look at the hot shoulders in front of them. She rejoices a little, noticing the cheese in the shoulder, though annoying that he prepares him daily. They are immersed in hot. She seems surprised that he was better than she expected. She asks how many eggs he put. He annoyingly answers, 5. Our main character becomes unbearable. She should change her tastes and learn how to eat what is, not what she wants. This gives rise to a conversation about his dislikes and its difficult character, which can be perceived as care. Overwhelming the mouth with hot shoulders, he accidentally poured a little soup on her shirt, which caused her sharp cry. But he is already accustomed to her drama and only reassures that she can wash the thing when she returns home. However, its indignation is caused by the fact that the plans to repeat the outfit with the same shirt the next day are destroyed. But wait, from where do not get, he appears, as usual, and insists that she removes the shirt because she plans to wash her. She is completely confused and asks what he means, but then he looks straight in her eyes and confidently orders. She accidentally hit her head against the wall behind. We are sure that Kwanbei will not miss the opportunity to mention it. He will joke, delaying his comments about her habit of beating her feet. He removed his shirt, opening his muscular body, which would immediately attract the passionate looks of women. He pulls her his shirt and orders her to remove her own, hinting. He assures that it will be easier to wash, but it throws a distrustful look at him, which does not affect his self-confidence. He thinks why he decided to go so far, and mentally pretends how much effort will be needed to wash things when he returns home. Deciding to avoid hard work, she grabs a shirt out of his hands and orders him to wait on the street, to which he agrees. She looks closely at his shirt, and after a while, he invites him to go inside. She immediately gives him his shirt. He looks at the shirt with emotionally, which makes her think about his generosity. Without hesitation, he takes a shirt out of his hands. There are several tense moments. She watches with curiosity from her back. It seems funny, but at the same time exciting that a guy... He also notices the lack of touch. At the same moment as it inhales the aroma, it comes closer, asking what she is busy. She fades for a moment, but then decides to arrange a performance, playing a role. And Chun Young-nan hints that it's time to go home. At the same moment, he wakes up, straightening and making a small, long sound. Let's talk between us. She looks at him like a cat that oversees her surroundings. She is reminded of the first moment when they were in this house together, and how she hesitated, or to tell him about her departure. She tried not to worry because it did not make sense. He always woke up at about the same time. She wondered how she was going to return home because it is dark outside. He asked a few alarming questions and received only an empty look. The situation is illuminated by the flashlight, but he advises her never to wander with this device because she is not going to formally announce the time and place of her stay. So he goes to the kitchen and returns, holding a wooden wand. Blood noise in the ears, and adrenaline rises to a dangerous level. Thoughts are confused, and she regrets that she has weakened vigilance, but for her great surprise, and he asked her to keep the stick and follow it. After all, he sees well in the dark. Since then, it has become their constant ritual on the way home. Do not pay attention to the fact that he specifically carved the stick for the stick. It makes her see a completely different person in him than rumors. He reports her about the pit on the road, but she starts talking on a completely different topic, that he looks like a cat. These are some of the common features he has. The conversation lasts until she asks how she goes home if he does not appear. His answer is cold, without any emotions. She enjoys the inability. His answer is always perfect but inaccessible. The rest of the trip is accompanied by a deafening sigh. Finally, they reach the crossroads where their paths diverge. Yoon Jin-yeon returns home without stops until she reached her own threshold. Stunned, Jun Jun-yeon noticed in the corner of a bunch of empty bottles. Sumi appeared on her face. She realized that her mother had drank again. She hopes that a woman. But suddenly a girl who laughs loudly with her feet apologies. However, the main character is far from cheap drama. In response, she just shows her a middle finger. "Hey, you!" The girl yells at her rival, and in response, she shows even more his middle finger, which even more ignites the girl. However, the sports coach intervenes and stops the development of conflict, friendly frying until it got worse. Yoon Jun-yeon is not particularly concerned about his rival. Instead, Kaisa is worried about her probably. After a night in a soaked form, you can easily catch a cold. She thinks whether, but suddenly a brunette appears from nowhere and knocks the ball out of her head. She announces her intention to throw the ball, and, passing it from hand to hand, decides to make a plan how to exclude Jun Jong-yeon from the game. Unfortunately, they were planned. Our main character is clearly annoyed by their tricks and dreams that they already throw the ball into her. The next turn to throw the ball at Na Sung-gun, but she is fervently asking him to allow her to throw it instead. Meanwhile, the state of Yoon Jun-ni is getting worse, although she plans to go to the medical center. But unexpectedly, the ball strikes it in the face. After the impact, it falls instantly. The Songgon runs down to her, not giving herself. Her fainting body. He pleadedly whispers that everything is fine as they rush to the medical center. After a few hours, her eyes suddenly open, glancing around and trying to understand what happened. A poster hung on the room when a nurse entered the room almost immediately. She began to complain about the heat until her gaze stopped at the heat source. That explains a lot. She also looks more closely at the drawing glued to the window that it breaks when it begins to annoy it and at the same time brings pleasure. The warm hand soothes her, relieving the pain from the light. The nurse is concerned about her well-being, unable to determine the main cause of the disease, and at the same time gently reproaches her for not informing her condition a physical education teacher. She also proposes to leave the rest of the day for rest because the classes are almost over. In addition, the woman announces the planned meeting to participate. She hears a familiar voice who addresses the nurse with the question of her, but does not have time to guess who it is. Nasongan looks into the room. Her thoughts are filled with anxious siren. It isn't an uncomfortable situation, but she is wondering what he is talking about. In the end, she became ill because of a cold. However, she decides to rise. Slowing downstream, she accuses him of just checking how he has suffered. He sharply denies her accusation, emphasizing that she looked a little suspicious. He further reveals his thoughts on her intention to get a blow, forcing him to act. She has a ball so that she could rest immediately. However, he pity because he decided on this step. She thinks whether it is a real apology because she rarely apologizes and difficult to recognize the sincerity of such words. After a short moment of reflection, she apologizes. She also points out that nothing is spoiled, and it suddenly fills the feeling of relief. She tells him the bruising, which she received, which causes him sigh. However, she waves her hand, trying to neglect it, and they are preparing to go on. She thanks for heating the room and closing the window, and he follows the heater. Although it is surprised how easy it is to give gratitude, it is a moment to get out of the room. But you wouldn't do it. This makes her be careful when moving. And it is at this point that a person of questionable reputation appears. unexpectedly appears literally from nowhere, creating an uncomfortable situation when the Trinity is found by views. One meeting in the eyes, and it is realized. She sharply waved Nasonggun's hand from her shoulder, but he stands in front of her fragile figure. In the imagination, she returns to that meeting in the nurse. He wondered if Juan Bamjan came to the clinic, also mentioned the absence of a nurse. However, he just looked at them while keeping. Our protagonist looks at her defender, thinking what happened to him, but her thoughts immediately switch to a man standing opposite them. She is surprised by his appearance in the nurse's office. I am sure of all 100% that he did not come to find out about her condition. And at the same time, with these words, he leaves the room, closing the door. And only then does the self-proclaimed defender exhale. Sorry. She remembers the medicines returned by him and assumes whether he is sick. After asking to ask later, she returns attention to reality at the calling of Nasonggun, who proposes to spend her home. However, his surprise has no limits when she begins to read the book, back to the mess she calls home. A mess that is not intended for other people's eyes. However, she promises to never lose her first place in front of someone else because it is the title she deserved on her own, thanks to her own efforts and talent. Her determination gradually fades as she looks at the bed with sleepy eyes, losing the invisible battle for focus. In a few minutes, we see our heroine spread on the bed, thinking about possible severe punishments for being in his possession, even if it is only temporary. The feeling that he can appear every moment permeated her whole body. She thinks of how to return home because for a while it remains without a flashlight. At the end of the evening, she jokes about his abdominal pain, after which he threateningly hints at the consequences. And with these words, she fainted. Already in the north, and the main character sleeps firmly on the bed. She feels her holding her wrist, preventing her from moving. Her eyes are wide open, but it stops halfway when she realizes that it is her coexisting partner. After a small pause, she shouts to him to let her go, struck him strongly into his stomach. It hit a low ceiling and throws an evil look at it. In her justification, she claims that he has put her in some way. He explained his actions annoyed. He thought she was just a stranger and she rejected him. It seems time to keep calm. He had to know exactly what she was. "You kidding me?" He asks her about time, but she stubbornly states that she has no idea because she just woke up. Only then does he report that now the second night. He continues to give sister advice on how to avoid dangers, warning it not to be in the mountains at such a late time. He adds that you should learn to live safe and always be ready for the worst. However, she reacts defensively again, how he could go if she still locked the door. He just tells her to stay home next week, noting that the second floor is not its territory. But you know what? Yun Jong-jog, blinded by anger, pours out his emotions about how bad it feels during the day. She yells at him, calling for her chance to take advantage if possible until it is too late. It is almost going, and therefore you need to take advantage of the opportunity. After a pause, he expresses his intention to follow her, but she refuses, emphasizing he is almost. He wanted to continue the story about the ball, but stopped at the same moment as the words broke from their mouths, hating themselves for unnecessary frankness. But it is late. She looked at him with her eyes wide open. It's hard to believe that he is really worried about her. But looking at him as he explains how much he scared him, however, continuing the conversation, he asks why she decided not to take medicine in a medical facility. She feels that, while he descends the stairs in search of something, her voice sounds across the room, emphasizing the light from now on. Otherwise, but then she notices that the medicine is in the same ones that were before. He tells her that she should not go down. It is too dizzy to go down the stairs. Are you interested in? She asks whether he was injured, but his answer exceeds all expectations. I have menstrual cramps, he states, but she is even more amazed by his ability to joke. She suddenly begins to laugh when she finally realizes the situation and feels that she is now very lacking in a close girlfriend with whom this funny moment could be separated. Her continuous hysterical laughter is heard while he just looks at her silently, expecting the moment she calms down. When she finally manages, they start a conversation, and Kwanbiga asks a question about her need to return home, but she only tells him about his plan to spend the night. She changes the topic and begins to talk about his habits to sleep when he orders her to return to her place. She resolutely refuses to move out of place. She stubbornly does not stop prevented in an innocent boy because of his sleep habits, even after he offers to spend her home. It turns into a small altercation until it suddenly says something that he stays overnight, which causes him a surprised look. She recently rethought the moment when she realized what the significance of her first statement could have. But he is already tired of her words and the choice of expressions. During the conversation, he recalls the places in the house, but she interrupts it, confessing that it is also her vacation. She is surprised how much she told him, but patiently waits for his answer. However, it quickly runs down the stairs, almost falling when it passes one step. She thanks him silently, immediately starting to shout to be careful. He waves her hand, advising to go to bed while he is at the table. She listens to his advice and goes to sleep. We are surprised to see a smile on her face. Moreover, it shines completely from this bright smile, which really impresses. She dives into her thoughts, finding peace in a mysterious house and the presence of Byung-jin. Only now does she feel the slight aroma of him on the bed, finally realizing that such persons like him do not use perfume, and immerses even deeper into these feelings. She thinks how two personalities can coexist in one body, and if she continues to joke, his return to reality will surely throw her out of there. She slept firmly, and she immediately covers the feeling of cheerfulness when the aroma of appetizing, spicy shoulders spills in the air. She lowers her gaze and sees that Hwan Byamjan is doing what she can best. Her voice is heard in space. She doubts whether it is possible to have only the ramen on the menu, but he completely ignores her, which causes her feelings of abuse. Going down the stairs, she asks him to turn off the light, explaining that she is so clearly visible. He replies that he cannot create the conditions under which he will have to see her breathless body on the floor. She notes that he can become not only a witness but also the suspect, and doubts his intentions. She makes a dry joke that she will sleep on his bed all day, laughing hysterically. While he looks at her with an inappropriate expression on her face, they say, "It is not funny." Holding a delicacy in her hands, she licks the aromatic ingredients. Its upset because of a broken yolk is obvious. He accuses her of smelling then, but she strongly declares her plans immediately after eating to take a hot bath. And with these words, they take up food. Soon we see our pet who washes the dishes, and she watches the back, passionate about seeing when. Her look stops on the towel lying on the table, ready for use. She plans to borrow a towel from him, but does not stop there. They start talking about washing hair and other little things when she complains how disgusting her hair will become. He asks who is probably taking care of her hair, immediately remembering the name of the Songgun. This leaves it completely puzzled. She tries to find out more, but he translates the conversation on the topic that it is time to return home. And she stops, whispering, "Yes." Hwan Byamjan shows great attention when boiling water and asks to do the same. When she wants to take a bath quickly, she suddenly becomes obedient and tells him a little while she is in her soul. However, he will tease her, noting that she sweats a lot. In the same spirit, she tells him not to bother her. A few minutes, she dries her hair, preparing for school, and looks at his sleeping body. She would like him to focus on his studies, although it may threaten her first place in class. Thoughts of his estimates do not leave her when she goes alone. The hooligans from the class block her path, irritating her to the depths of her heart. She decides to go on. Hesu accuses her of pretending to be unconscious to attract the attention of Nasongun. Our heroine is shocked and, nevertheless, tries to understand the essence of these accusations. But they claim that you love them. The content of the accusations, like Nasongan, manifests itself in various forms, affirming all sorts of, for example, when she is indifferent in his presence, although he really looks astonished. He is deepened in reflection, thinking about everything that does not concern Sungun. Rejecting these thoughts, she passes the girl. The only bright light in her eyes is the nozzle that stands out among all others. Kisu lightly pushes it, stopping in place. She whispers something about her mother, trying to scare the interlocutor, but in fact, it only distracts from the topic of conversation. He looked at the girls, immediately focusing on Yoon Jun-yeon. He asks her well-being, but she refuses to stay with her business. She was cold when she came out of his presence, shocked and confused. When she meets Hwan Vihamjan on her way, he does the same as before, do their own business. In class, it seems to distract others. Junayeon could never boast a normal relationship with her mother because she is not an ordinary person. Although they live together, Juno knows nothing about it at all. She knows almost nothing about her mother, except that she feels pain and behaves with her daughter as if she were a pair for beating. This makes the girl indifferent and less concerned about her situation. Poverty caused her even more suffering, no more than the pain that has transformed her mother. She recently noticed that her mother put a little money in the corner. Now it has become her pocket. It undertakes to be the best in everything, but suddenly, she felt something firmly struck her on her head and was a bored teacher nearby. He quarreled her for naping in the lesson and also accused of avoiding classmates, which, in fact, was true. Great truth. It seems that the teacher of mathematics was a pervert. He already had a negative reputation because of sexual harassment and only complicates her life. She continues to talk, whereas she silently prays for his death, and Nasong and his god is a gift when he undressed. Smiling, he apologizes for putting her in such a situation, especially after her recent breakdown. The man continues his conversations, accusing her of love. But no, Kwanbum Jin is already saturated on his throat. At that moment, he throws a basketball ball into a shield that flies for an inch away from his head. Suddenly, silence reigned in the class, and all the views turned to him when he began to describe how ineptly the ball was thrown into her. The teacher is calling him loudly by name, demanding to write an apology by the end of the day. She asks why he decided to surrender, and he confesses that he is, after all, his own fault. He looks in the direction of Kwanbum Jin, trying to understand what is happening between them. Although he has chaos in his head and it worries him even more, shortly afterwards the Trinity appears. Everyone writes a letter with apology. When Konbyeom Hangin suddenly leaves the class with an empty sheet, interestingly, whether he or she will be punished gently or not, a little shocked by his actions. A person who is ready to intercede for others has been opened. In the classroom, only talk about Junjun Jeon and Kwan Bae Jin, and strange glances fly to her side when she reaches the fee Bi Jin. She is not ready to risk their friendship. She appeals to him, demanding an apology and none. Oh, what is the intrusive mathematics teacher? At this point, the class looks out of the door, interested in the last gossip. Meanwhile, Wan Baomi does not pay attention to her at all, continuing to go. Suddenly, she grabs him, but he sharply repels her hand. He looks at her eyes that glow, like melted gold, and asks who she understands he himself. Jonghyons are astonished by their determination as much as the curious listeners understand it. They seek to find out all the details and closely watch their every movement. He looks at both of them like concerned bunnies and leaves them. However, Nasong-gun confesses that he has no idea how to write an apology, not to mention teaching someone. It scares him even more. In addition, she thinks why he behaves so strangely in her presence. Provides a short letter that could well serve as an apology. Text. The conversation continues when he suddenly asks whether he has blamed it. But she assures that he is not guilty of anything and explains why she thinks. She returns to the class but cannot help but notice how involuntarily he makes her feel small and insignificant. She asks what is happening between her and Kwan Bamamjin. Our main character does not intend to tolerate such nonsense. She asks if she has some idea of the situation, but the other girl denies loudly, demanding not to interfere in her business to have a chance to love when she returns to her table. Our main character moves in the direction of the mountains, looking thoughtfully at the horizon. She asks herself if her partner is in the composition. She needs answers to her questions, especially about her attitude. She has already provided a possible answer. Keep their friendship secret or protect his reputation. Her thoughts are chaotic from intention to talk to him to prepare for the exams as she approaches the house. He considers whether not to spend the house in the house if he does not come. In the end, he decides that it is better to spend the night in the house than stay with the mother. She is well aware that it is because of her new acquaintance with Nasonggon and decides to avoid it. However, he understands that you need to talk seriously with your mother. However, she tries to move all these thoughts into the background. The door opened. She reached out to the door handle, but frozen halfway. She decided to get into the house on his way to scare him. It is her way to take revenge on his coldness at school. Hello, Kumbungan. She took a little, but suddenly, she fell on the bed and his hand firmly fixed her neck. When he found an uninvited guest, apologized but could not. She did not pay attention, demanding water and screaming to turn on the light while he ran down the stairs. She jokes that she will breathe faster than she falls, forcing him to apologize again. He warns her not to joke so more, but he announces that it is much more sporty, causing her real pain, and she squeezes her legs in pain. It concludes that it consists not of the body that demonstrates, but of stones and gravel. After that, he sharply changes the topic and asks about the basketball act, and he confesses to his habit of sleeping badly. However, it is skeptical of this because it has been sleeping almost continuously for a long time. He explains his frequent appearance in this reason. He quickly changes the topic of conversation and asks why they returned to the warehouse instead of going home, because she spent the night there. He also accuses her of reading too much, what she could really do. She does not deny, stating that it is the only thing she has. Bringing to his feet, she emphasizes that he should write an apology because the offended teacher is stubborn. They write their letters, but it is offended. He emphasizes he never mentioned Nazengun in their conversations. The couple goes the street and it stops unexpectedly, noting that the street lanterns are off. She recalls the location of her home, but makes it clear that he can continue his way. In addition, she jokes, for which he receives a strict look, a little ice, reporting that the street is safe. Suddenly, he points to something malefish. However, she asks her to hold her daughter to the door if he is so worried, although it is not necessary. When they approach the figure she recognizes as her mother, she runs to a woman, pleading to return home. But what is happening next, you can't even imagine. The community evaluates her actions, considering how vulnerable she became. It stays side by side. She brutally throws her daughter on the ground, causing strokes with all power. In the midst of the drama, she looks with the Quanta Beos Umjin. His eyes are immediately filled with hot tears, and he hides his face. Her secret is revealed, and now she looks like the weakest place. But inside, it is absorbed by the thoughts of everything that happened last night. The anxiety is increasing as long as the mother continues to act as much as possible. She does not blame her mother, because she understands that it can be the result of her past. It is at this moment that she feels warm hands that envelop her, stopping likely blows. She bites him in response. Then he announces his intention to go to bed. She whispers quietly for him to retreat, and he obeys, allowing her to face her so-called mother. Grasping her hands, she pours all her mental pain about her mother's cruel actions. She explains that she lives in accordance with laws and established rules, which she set for herself. She screams at her to cease to look like her really indifferent. He pulls out her hand from her grip, turning away and leaving. While the mysterious woman looks, Wan Bayamjan is in a hurry. Says a good word about the diligence with which her daughter learns. The woman looks as if he wants to say something, but suddenly turns away and goes away, leaving him alone with his own grief and wounded soul. The next morning, Junjun Antai was immersed in thinking, trying to understand when everything went for a break. After the incident, she is so ashamed that she decides to avoid it at any cost. And although it is difficult because of their past as classmates and partners in coexistence, it still insists on its decision. She remembers the moment when he covered her from the blows that she fell on her mother. She comes to her senses when she is about to give a letter with apologies in which there is probably nothing but insincere words. She notices the rest of Bamjin's rest. Students whisper about his wounds, sympathizing with him. Watch the teacher's office. She notices how many students look inside, and it causes her curiosity. She sees a woman who embodies perfection in everything. Its appearance does not fit at all to these abandoned places. Her mind already draws a guess about who this woman can be. Feeling a slight discomfort, she decides to return later. But when her name is heard from the teacher's mouth, it makes her stop. He invites her to the office, presenting as an excellent. Following her nature, she is an extremely talented student. The woman tells her about her son's report during their sporting activity. She confirms her suspicions that she is Nasangun. She feels very inconvenient, and trying to resolve the situation tells the woman that this is not such a big problem. However, the woman continues to apologize for her son, talking about taking care of the students of the school. Finally, she announces her plans. Build a gym at school. See you next time. Due to the fact that it is her hometown, she is hopeful that teachers will become more open to students' health. The problem with the fact that her son should write an apology letter, which he had never done in his previous school before. She addresses her remarks to the teacher of mathematics, who is worried, noticeably sweating. Naksan Hun suddenly interrupts the meeting with a loud exclamation. She realized that she was her sign to go, so she quickly put an envelope with additional money for lunch and immediately left the office. Mathematics teacher Mr. Kim already feels hostile to her, but a fat man advises him to be careful with words. However, John breaks their conversation, remembering the letter of designer. He indifferently tells her to leave him anywhere. Yun John leaves the office. It is a quick step in the direction of the class when it suddenly sounds of Nasangun's mother. The happy prince understands the hint and introduces Jonium to his mom. She jokes that her son causes hassle. The main character repeats what she said earlier about the construction of the gym, which causes a surprised sigh of her son. But she said that. She approaches her, discussing what her son is talking about every occasion. Admire the beauty and mind of Yunjunjan. Nasangun and I were stunned when she invited a modest student to her home. Their meeting is scheduled for Saturday. She is trying to give up, but Nasonggun's mother has already made a decision, telling her about the invisible location of her home and the time of the meeting. With these words, she leaves the room. Her son begs for her mother's involuntary actions. He apologizes for the possible future troubles because it will no longer come for no good reason. Songun, instead, does not give her pleasure from explicit detachment, behaving like a silently saying goodbye to her mother when he goes to class. The helplessness in the hallway overwhelmed her. The next scene shows how the hand hits the table with all his strength. The EU boils from anger, learning that Nazengun's mother has invited her rival for lunch. Her voice is heard throughout the classroom. Feeling inconvenient, he returns to the city. Every time Miss Honghun passes past his table, he plunges into the depths of his thoughts. He thinks why John Junjan's invited to his home. She goes by, trying not to meet him. He looks after her long, watching her back, making sure she is still alive. She thinks he can do in her head. It prefers moments when it is immersed in training. It is a calming activity that gives a sense of rest. He imagines her brilliant because she is special. When the world seems too tight, she thinks that she is known to all but herself. She loves to stay alone, even despite numerous people who are trying to get closer to her. Watching her, the feeling of relief covered everyone, even when she studied some detail for a long time. Escape from cruel reality. And then he thought again about a few details that he noted, looking at it. Especially embarrassed by the way she looks at Nasonggun. It is a little disappointing. He constantly told how he approached her, but eventually received a refusal. He mentioned how he met her in a forgotten warehouse. Her behavior was unforgettable because she could easily go down for the ghost. He rejoices in her presence and appreciates their secret relationships, but thinks about how to manage their misunderstandings after yesterday's drama. She assured herself that he saw nothing. Partly accused her mother for her unusual methods of education. Saturday is no longer around the corner, and we see you. Chunyun goes on a planned date with Nasonggun and his mother. She is really sincerely in love. It is elegant, but looks dissatisfied. She believes that her appearance is imperfect, but it does not care. Condemning a mathematics teacher for making them writing a letter of designing first, the characters felt a certain image. She thinks why the woman invited her, while thinking about the escape plan. She notices a familiar figure that waves her hand. He seems attractive, though there is doubt in her thoughts. But she retains a cold facial expression when he approaches her. She covered her with questions that she does not have a clear answer. She remains silent while he says. At the same time, she calls into question the spontaneity of his mother. His face gives the whole truth, even when he invites people to visit. She is looking for confirmation of his sincerity. They start talking about the true cause of the invitation. He recalls that his mother noticed her name because she often sounds. Shortly thereafter, they went to talk about the apology that they had to express. Letter. Discrimination by a mathematics teacher. Wan Bayamjan throws the ball into the basket, looking at the teacher. He thinks that he can scare him, and he wants to ask him when he suddenly violates her reflections and begins an easy conversation about inviting questions. Juan Badzamun finished. The conversation about it is ongoing when he notices that they are both well acquainted with each other, even though, when he turned on the heater or hung the posters to block the light, it froze. Her eyes expanded widely when she understood everything. We will quickly move to the house where servants respectfully greet the young owner. In large space, despite the fact that her thoughts are still occupied by an unexpected discovery, he confidently steps into the living room where he meets his magic mother. Thereafter, sharing kindness, a certain gentleman Kim invites them to a cafe where she gets that is overflowing with a variety of delicacies. I'm sorry, but I cannot assist with this request. Her mom makes a conversation about school success, trying to find out the secret of her outstanding. However, she is persistently interested in visiting what university she is going to enter and what subjects she would like to study. By proposing to consider the medical and law faculties as possible options for starting, Yoon is not going to throw his pride in dirt, but carefully answers his continuous questions. Suddenly, the mother of the Sungun begins to be interested in the work of her father, choosing careful words so that you do not sound too straightforward. Yoonjun auntie is stunned by this question, accidentally whisking her drink and spoil the outfit when she stands on, apologizes for the inconvenience caused, and the woman immediately gives the instruction to Mr. Kim has to prepare the right dress for her. The inconvenience of this day is still felt. The atmosphere is tense, it could be cut with a knife, but it finally follows a man, although it can withstand a lot of pain. They go through a spacious corridor. However, she blames herself for not thinking about the possible consequences. Careful while he fusses, doing some things. The woman who eats is clearly visible. This is the beginning of the so-called lunch. At this moment, the room enters a woman in a striking red dress. She hands her the address she carefully chosen. It's for her. Yoon Jun-aon gets it by expressing gratitude while she watches closely at all around, wondering whether a woman is in no hurry, but quickly drives away this opinion. Sangen's mother begins a conversation, remembering his missing father and a mentally ill mother. She continues to tell us that she has pity for people living in her condominium. Blah, blah, blah. She advises her to smile when she sees her and notes how little she affects her son. Picking up a shirt, recognizes it by the dress that the servants wore. The woman praises how well it sits on her, as if perfectly created for her. It burns from humiliation. Without unnecessary delay, the main character directly asks about the reason for her invitation. But instead of answering, he begins to humiliate her. Yoon Jong-jeon does not allow you to offend themselves by responding to a woman with the same energy. Almost gets slap. She, without losing confidence, advises you to keep track of the future. She boldly promises even heaven and earth just follow the terms of the agreement. Suddenly, he asks her name, tumoring something about the wrinkle. He remembers his mother as if it were just aunt. The evening is approaching and the sky will give us generous rain. While we look at the bed, random thoughts about Na Sung-gun and Yoon Chin-yeon. The best period of their lives. He decides that there is no better way, so he goes on a jog. What an unexpectedness. He sees his neighbor worriedly, through the wet rain, standing on the threshold. She looks at him with sad eyes and he quietly pronounces her name. Yoon Jun-anag. She accuses him in pervert, but he does not pay attention to it when she climbs the stairs. She sits sharply on the bed, squeezes his fists and angrily hit him, expressing hatred of the rich, even cursing them. She persuades her not to worry about contamination of the sheet, as it is time to wash it. After completing her episode, it descends. It is then that he draws attention to the t-shirt that is on it, and she confirms his assumption. She recounts her experience, especially emphasizing the moment when they gave her work clothes, only to humiliate her. He asks why she agreed to their pathetic proposal. She replies that she had no choice because she could not wander aimlessly. Next is not possible. He passes her shirt, asking her to remove cold clothes. Obviously, she feels depressed because of it. She thinks why he was invited at first. She interrupts his reflections, asking that he plans to wear. But he does not pay attention to her question and asks him to give him a work shirt. Instantly, he breaks her into pieces that destruction of your heart through a spoiled tissue that makes him think about whether she has a drop of pride. Then she accuses him of, while drinking mussels instead of dressing, he decides to teach her that she loves to admire his fitting body. She tries to understand his words, asking him in a question, but then decides to clearly explain what he implies. It surprised him. Sorry, but it looks like the starting part of the text is missing to improve. Please provide a complete snippet for editing. And with this oath, he said, to be a barely noticeable smell of shampoo on her hair. But you know what? She smells of her hair, between them, and the mood falls instantly. Inconvenient silence reigns in the air for a long time. He thinks of which topic to choose for conversation, and at the same time she spoke. She looks at his unleashed wound, and there is a silent understanding between them. He thinks that she would never hit someone, and she asks when that happened. He hints at the blow of her mother, hoping that she will not look like her. But her mother is still alive. She looks at him as if he would lose control, emphasizing what his incredibly strange joke. He replies that they are very similar in this. The face of Turn glances when he asks about the nature of the impact, and she opens to him how he feels exactly in these moments. Complete numbness that covers her. He begs him to say something to ease her condition and plunges into thoughts, trying to solve what she meant. Finally, she finds a solution, to reveal a part of herself which he did not tell anyone. My father was a real man. My father was a gangster. He continued to tell her that, after his father's death, the war began. Everyone wanted to take revenge on him in any way. At heart, he finds comfort in what he tells her, though he does not want to admit it. He looks at him with a wounded look. However, she rejects her sympathy. She goes to talk that she is in a better position than she really is. Therefore, the question that a dead king can cause evil when his officials should be afraid leaves him in surprise from what she is saying. To express strange things because perhaps he could touch someone else. He causes him. She notes that his strength is his father's inheritance and also remembers his habit often to sleep. However, she concludes that strong guys are not spend at least 18 hours out of 24, but he can choosing to go to cook rances instead of getting into her trap of a friendly word exchange. He encouraged her to read or other activity, without his book, even when he reminds him of being. Boil the egg. They admire the lively exchange of jokes, and she confesses that he is barely. Their views occur at the same level. And you will not believe what will happen next. He carefully cleans her hair for her ears, wants to touch her lips, but rests. He recalls that she needs to get a towel so that she does not get cold. It throws a prickly phrase about his naked body, but he ignores her while she tries to comprehend what has just happened. The next day at school, we see them in the usual places, but chaos reigns in her head. She tries to understand the situation. She feels doubt, but quickly becomes aware and decides to never be influenced. The beginning was interesting. Suddenly appears and asks if everything is fine with her. He returns her clothes, but it only causes inconvenience. The hits and her group throw their malicious views on her. In addition, he promises to return. She apologizes for her mother's actions against her, and only then does she begin to deny, show their ignorance. The teacher enters the class, interrupting an inconvenient conversation, and he asks everyone to calm down and take their seats. The teacher announces a group project and calls on everyone to choose a partner, while the elder who disappeared somewhere will make a list. Meanwhile, Yunchun Auntie is indignant in thoughts, because it does not like group projects because of their fuss and noise. Anyone who persistently promotes the idea of socialization. I unexpectedly decided to join with someone except Shilan Kwana Bayamjin so that their friendship would not raise suspicion. When it seems that you have seen everything. Little Prince Nazangunu invites her to become his partner, but she refuses almost immediately. He does not seem to know her causes and who she plans to unite with. She is a little aware, remembering who she plans to unite with. And before her eyes, there is a past conversation again, defining weakness and concluding that he is reminiscent of her mother. But that's not all. You don't even imagine what happens next, asking him to become his partner. She was surprised, but when preparing to reject the offer, Kisu threatens to reveal the information that her mother may concern. And finally, she decides to choose a haze instead of Nasangun. Our main character accuses her of excessive feelings for her, trying to provoke. It flashed in the head that it was finally time to stop the endless chat. Meanwhile, the Hess screams, but only gets the view of contempt from Nasanguna, which is confidently departing. Moment. A silent distance reigned between them. Sliding his eyes around, someone noticed her unique way to find new friends. However, she does not think about it for a long time, looking angry at the sleeping Juan Baumgens. She is clearly annoyed by the fact that he chose the most amazing time for sleep. The scene changes. We see Hesu and Yunjin-jan in a set place, although the latter does not like this idea too much. When I saw it, I realized that she could easily deal with the Hess, even with her eyes closed. A real arrogant girl. The girl shouts to her to leave Nazangun alone, but she looks for completely different data, and those concerning her mother. Her rival wants to be clear and straight when she begins to walk around, who eventually became known. The activity of the mother in the motel, located in the lane of the city, struck her to the depths of the soul. The daughter asks herself how the mother can be so confident, living on the earnings of dissolution. She returns to thoughts about her childhood hobbies. The young man interrupts her, asking who her source of information is. She gladly replies that she is her dad and describes someone who perfectly suits her mother's role. Yunjuna is, this is not possible, because her mother cannot be involved in accusations because of an unstable mental state. But Kwan Bamji is another story. He remains a mystery, and she wants to know more about him. Mentions the accounts that usually leaves on the table. She decides to internally retain calm, but the Hess is constantly crossing the border, affecting it and pouring out the flow of abusive words. Comments on how, through the lifestyle of mom, the class becomes incapacitated for the rest of the day for students. Meanwhile, our main character is set to reveal this case, questioning the activities of the parent business because of the situation in the area. Confidently declares the meeting he was going to, but her illusions are instantly dispelled when she realizes that only bars work in the area, most of whom are there. Instead, she accuses her father of having become a hostage to his illness. Peace and good. Suddenly, Gisa beats her, blaming her mother of fornication. A clash begins between women, but Yunjunanta interferes and stops Gis. Sorry, I can't help with this. She literally pushed the rumors to spread, and she was happy to do it. She points to how this situation will affect her family and shout to fall behind. Shove. At that moment, they were interrupted by three guys known as the bullies of the third year, noting that they communicate too loudly. The gang leader threshes the girls, forcing them to choose a side, but if he receives a refusal, it is upsetting him and usually leads to problems. She is so frightened that, looking for comfort, she thought she could get wet, and at that moment, the rival became her girlfriend. Meanwhile, our heroine, it is in time in the door that a high figure appears, which emotionally looks at the barrel. She sighs with relief, but the gang leader does not perceive hints and seems to be almost challenging until his brothers raised his eyes and revealed his personality. The Kwan Bamjian looks at them silently until they are completely silent, inviting Hisu to a small conversation. The lady enjoys the presence of her knights in shining armor. Sue with shame comes with Juan Beeman, leaving a partner among school hooligans. From curiosity that can be dangerous, they think what happens between two students. Their views focus on the girl among them. They try to find answers to this extremely difficult situation. They open her thoughts, filled with numerous school tasks, cannot open the mouth by passing by, while they offer to learn together. On the other hand, the kerosene attracts the attention of Kwanbum when he notices how carefully he watches over her opponents. She asks why he called her. She just asks where she has this hairpin. However, she says that her mother has brought a pin from one of her travels. And immediately he goes, leaving her thinking about the true reason why he called it. She is aware that he may have done it to save her, and the cheeks are immediately filled with a blush. Even now, I can't help you notice how pretty it is. After that day, we see how Yoon Jin-jog went to the hut, thinking about the reasons why Hwan Baim-jin insisted on the presence of Jesus. Having reached the hut, she sees the closed door, and again angry through the unpleasant scene at school. Later on the same day, her gaze falls on a closed house, and she asks herself why a partner. She sits at the table and repels the chair with anger, pitying the decision to climb the roof. Slightly calming, she reminds me of her. I remember Hasabyu's words about her mother, and I hope that it was not true. However, it does not exclude this opportunity because the appearance of a woman seems tired of life. Besides, she recalls the events of the night when she attacked her in front of Kwan Biao. She hated the Hess most. Suddenly, the doors open sharply, grabbing their surprise. I look at Janyan when he sets out. Ramen? He asks, but she remains cold. She replies that he is not interested, and even the offer of 2 eggs will not change her fate. She yells at him so that she eats everything, but he guesses that she may have a nervous breakdown. He invites her to splash all his annoyances on him. He tries to understand what caused her anger and recalls the conflict on the roof, but he denies this, but uses the opportunity to find out what he was talking about. Feeling a slight jealousy, he suggests it, hinting that she interrogates him. What? She screamed, asking whether these words are suited to their relationship. Hwan Bayamjan is genuinely embarrassed. He tries to understand what the matter is. He explains this by the fact that she has an empty stomach. For a few minutes taking up for the preparation of the rab, she at the last moment states that he is not hungry. Tense silence reigned between them. Everything remained unknown until she decided to talk about it. They began to discuss their relationships and the growing suspicion of people. But he warned her not to interfere in his affairs, because it would not lead to anything good. Yoon Jun-jong is unwavering and does not pay attention to the thoughts of others. She says she retreats a little back from the hot steam. She thinks about learning, but continues to talk about their relationship, noting that he treats her not as strange as others. She asks for herself if her brief speech seemed strange. Their views are fixed on each other when he asks her about the strange things she mentioned. Interesting, asks whether she had harmed the bullies, but he tells him about the compliment received and also orders a drink, returning to his inevitable end. Forces itself to stay calm. Later that night, we see how the couple descends from the mountain. However, Junjun Anti is immersed in thinking about his relationship with Hwan Baimjan. The constant behavior of Grega knocks her out of the panther. She no longer understands what he thinks about it. She regrets that he was not frank from the beginning. She involuntarily notes how an unexpectedly pleasant voice is. And yet, she recalls his words that it can harm her. But you know what? She is not worried at all, especially when it comes to rumors about his character. Her palms sweated, so she released the handle for which she kept. She proposes to wrap her with a handkerchief instead of adhesive tape, and she sings the gospel songs overflowing with his incredible kindness. She tells him about his intentions to go to the lane near the motel, and he hears this news with surprise. She expressed anxiety that disappeared immediately. So leave everything as it is. Do not take care of your actions, she said. But he grabbed her for his wrist, trying to find out her motives. And she's just her mother. At first glance, he is indifferent, but at heart, he sympathizes with her. The same situation with Junjun, who tries to gather with the spirit, although he feels excitement because of the approaching weekend. She could stop the Hess from the spread of rumors, but realizes that she needs to get into the truth. She does not want to go there. How to ask him for help so that it does not look desperate. Suddenly, he interrupts her thoughts, asking what time she plans to leave. She behaves. This is naive, though he could understand it. However, she reported time and offered to buy him a burger as a thanks. He stretched her stick. They continued their journey, having fun discussing how their mathematics teacher got lost during his visit to him. She is going to a meeting quickly, although she argues with herself for a long time how really she is ready. She thinks what she looks like the best. Meanwhile, Kwan Bamjin is dressed in his usual clothes, complemented only by a cap. It quickly passes the accessory store, enthusiastically considering some of them. Showcase with colored ribbons. She approaches him when he is delayed in front of the tool store. She asks his plans, and he confesses that he wants to go. Then he remembers the waterproof cover for leaks in their home. We go on. An unfamiliar elderly man interferes with their conversation, wondering what they need. To our surprise, he corrects the hat on her hair and goes to the owner of the store for conversation. After a while, they continue their journey. Meanwhile, she is interested about the reason why he wears a cap. He reminds her where they go and warns not to stay too close. However, the store owner looks slightly disrespectful, as if looking at them. The next scene shows two heroes who are hiding in the corner, carefully examining the outskirts in search of signs that may point to her mother. She remembers their short journey to this point. He asks what plan she has, and she replies that she is about to go to the motel to find out about her mother. His surprise is invaluable, but then he makes a long speech about which gossip will start to spread as she goes there. She is sure that no one recognizes her, while he tells her in good faith about their gossip, like a tattoo, and even over time exaggerate. When he becomes uncertainly serious, she jokes. Returning to a serious topic, she recalls rumors about the incident in his previous school. The question also arises, why are people afraid of him when he is really such a good person if you do not pay attention to his height? But before she thinks more, he whispers quietly about a person who just passed, releasing it when it becomes safe. She puts a trap to him, and he is silent when she says something that he declares such feelings. Receiving reproaches, not able to share a close space with him more in any way. Having lost patience, she goes out and offers to stroll through a narrow street. He grabs her by the wrist and pulls it back into the corner, warning not to walk thoughtlessly. He also declares his desire to go the other way. Yunjin Ant is overwhelmed by emotions when it suddenly falls on the floor. Miracle. Excessively responds to physical contact, partially explaining this by the absence of the father. The voice that distracts her from pity seems to be familiar. Is her mother's voice. She watches how this cruel man behaves with her mother humiliating and heartily, wanting to release the mother from the world of suffering to which she is so used to. Dreams, because she is not an ordinary baby with a regular mother. It has good mental health. Physically and emotionally exhausted, she notices how Wan Baimjan appears nearby. She is no longer concerned about what he can think, and the woman she calls her mother is not interested in her. Juan proposes to transport it, but she refuses. He, telling him to leave her alone until she expresses her emotions. Although he can no longer look at her, he instantly hugs her completely. Sonia cries because of a difficult situation in which she found herself with her mother. Bamjin hugs her, trying to reassure her so that she stops crying. She constantly asks herself why her mother did so. He looks down and sees her condition. She squeezes her hand, and in fact, blood goes. He stops her so that it does not happen. He approaches her to reassure and support. Both proceed to leave as they walk down the street. He feels strong hunger and proposes to order hamburgers for both. She does not want to eat a hamburger and does not want to go home to eat rabbins. She insists that they have a picnic, money to buy the food they have to eat. He pulls out his wallet and passes it. The wallet, when he gives it, goes on. He asks her to spend all the money from him as he heads forward. She looks at the wallet and sees that there is $30.01. Thank you, she says. Both go to the market. Meanwhile, Nasuhuna goes with his mother, and they have a small conversation about Yunjin Nonha. She says she likes the same as he doesn't like it. She tells her mother about her behavior. She always brings the wall on all sides. If he only had the opportunity to talk to... He looks out the window. Wonjin. Looking closer, he notices that he goes next to the girl. Nasongan tries to look at the face of the girl with whom he goes, but she wears a cap. A few minutes later, he finally sees her face and sighs surprisingly. He is amazed at how they can know each other by asking themselves. Saying goodbye to his mother, he tells her, "Beat." He comes out of the car, heading to the woman, slamming the door behind him. He follows both of them because he is upset that Jun Jae-hyun is friends with Kwon Bem. The constantly murmur something under your nose finally disappear from his field of view. He stops, delving into thought where they could go, but barely noticeably annoyed. It turns out that Kwon Bae Omjin and Yoon Chun Aunt went to the store to buy the necessary ingredients for cooking. Returning home, Yoon Chun Aon shows all his power and determination. She begins to cook sandwich. To speed up the process and eat faster, it allows it to help. It still completes its sandwich, and it decides to go out to spread newspapers outside as he settled on the street. Returning to the room, he accidentally faces her on the threshold. She holds 2 sandwiches in her hands, gives them to him, and she returns for milk. Finally, everything is ready. She sits next to him on the street. She dreams of having a phone or other device with her to take photos, because it is such a wonderful sight. The new day began, and she has already prepared everything. Her mom allocates money, realizing that this will not be enough for the girl to join college. She leaves the room and goes to school, reflecting on the photo. Her face shines with a smile when she remembers the moment engraved in the picture. Nick went with Hwan Byung-gin. Combining all the facts, she realized that he was not the culprit. She smiles and thinks about inviting him to the next series of their adventures. They may have another picnic on Saturday night. Be that as it may, she soon comes to school. The first person she notices is Kwon Bae-jin. It's not a Sangon again. He greeted her and she reciprocated. After exchanging courtesy, he asked her to stay after lessons. He asked her to stay after the lessons because he had something important to say. She grunts, dissatisfied, getting a book and a pen from the bag. Someone is calling. Viawan. Kwon B. Yoonchun and Jonghyun immediately notice the sound and come back to find out what is happening. These are their classmate Haisa. You like it. He is annoyed that she appeals to him by his name, though she never called him so. Still, Haisa gives him a note. He opens it and begins to read it. His smile makes Yoon Young feel even more despair. She wants to know what he reads and what caused such a smile. At this point, a teacher with a smile on his face comes to the class. He attracts the attention of Kwon Byung-jina. What? Why does Yoon Gin-jeon doubt why everyone is smiling today with Kwon Bum-gin? She asks herself. The teacher leaves the class. She patiently waits for his return to ask what is happening, but it has passed. And it is still not returning. Suddenly, one of the students runs to the class. Everyone immediately pays attention to him. He has excitedly told the news. Imagine, guys. Kwon Beum-jin was taken away. John Young tries to convince a group of guys who are negative about Kwon Beum-jin. He explains that it can only be a rumor, but they are all set up to attack it. Someone intervenes and stops them. And who is it, by the way? It's not Sangun. He tries to reassure them, and a little debate begins between them that what could happen to Aquinas of Biomond. The teacher goes into the classroom, and the students immediately begin to fall asleep with questions about where Kwon Byeodomjin is and why he was tightened somewhere. This is not so serious, so it's just worth sitting and understanding. Several students are still whispering, but the teacher makes remarks, forcing them to focus because the exams have a few weeks left. After school, Aksu's Aksa's school decides to go to the Chuhan Bamjan's house, forgetting that she promised to meet with Nasagan. Nasangan calls her, but she, without hesitation, runs out of class. Sungun follows her out and stops to find out why she is going so early. She does not want to answer him. She just wants to know what he plans to talk to her. He asks what she needs, why she is in a hurry, and whether he is going to the police station to visit Kwon Byum-jin. But she does not answer. Then he talks about how he saw them together. Recently, when I mentioned it, her reaction was unexpected, but she denies any feelings. While they stand in place, Mr. Kim appears and appeals to Na Sung-gun to approach. Collect his things so you can go. He asks why Mr. Kim decided to come for him, because earlier he does not remember that his mother tells him to return home before. But Mr. Kim told him that a few days ago there was an attack near the city, and the main suspect of this case was one of his classmates. Yun-jon, when he was captured, addresses Mr. Kim with the question, who is the main suspect? He said the suspect, a man named Kwon Bi-gin. She starts protecting it. Nasusun notices all this. He is upset because how they were approaching so close that she talks about him in that way. Then he reassures Yoon Jung-yeon. He promises to get into the essence of the case. Nastanin approaches Mr. Kim and asks him to go with him to the toilet. He asks him if you can find out all the necessary information before dinner. He nods in response. Then they both go home. Sitting with his mother, he talks about the suspect to whom she asks. She just wants to be sure that her son does not communicate or friends with such students at school. Then she turns to Yoon Jong-yeon, trying to find out if they are also close. Fortunately, he replies that they are already familiar. And his mom begins to talk about her contemptuously, insulting all the ways. His mom talks about how she went to Mr. Kim to help him complete the case. Nasungan's face has an expression of disappointment, and he gets up immediately, but immediately apologizes. He goes to the balcony and thinks about everything that has happened. He understands that Kwon Byo-mogun is actually innocent. He begins to think about how to prove, as his mother has acquaintances in high positions. Reflecting how to act and how to help, it doesn't even want Jun Gin-jog. The next day, Jun Gin-jog is dissatisfied with current problems. She had no news from Kuvanbea Omzin, and she decided to act on her own because she could not rely on anyone. She went to the police department and invented a fake statement about the lost thing. She remembered the wallet last night. She was asked to describe him, and she told everything in detail. All this is part of the plan. The more they ask her to describe the parts of the wall, the deeper they are immersed inward, and it gradually follows them. Fortunately for her, she notices Kwon Bimodzin, and he also pays attention to her. To go, but inside it is boiling. Why she should do it, given how disappointed she feels. The officer returns. However, the news that she will not be able to see it upsets her. She promises to call if they can find it. In addition, she rethinks her actions when he calls into question her relationship with him. Kwanbae Umjin thinks whether she was too careless if she was trapped. She decides to swim downstream and recognizes that they are a classic example, comrades, but his next question is surprised by her. He asks about probability. Was she with him that night when he was arrested? And now she is really shocked. I'm not sure. The questioning of Saturday's night is ongoing, but it is still in the hospital. He looked at what happened on Saturday, and the expression of his face tells her everything you need to know. I wonder why he says nothing. I feel that he may try to keep their friendship. She is about to say something. He explodes frenzy without holding emotions and begins to scream, accusing her of harassment. This is especially surprised by the police officer, because he has not said the words from the moment of arrest. The man begins to shout, demanding that she be removed immediately, swearing his innocence. Although he admits going to the motel for personal reasons that won't spill. Officers, tired of his shouts, delve into his business, trying to make him shut up, although he continues to shout. During the interrogation of officers, he suddenly begins to act wildly, but later returns his focus on Junjunang. She interrupts him, remembering the lost wallet, and he honors her request. She asks for his contact information, but hints at his ability to keep secrets. Please. She asks her to call her if she remembers something, then leaves the station. Although the officer feels intuitively, he hopes that she will speak faster to give him alibi. He realizes that they try to protect him. They try to protect their business in the motel, but asks themselves what motels take minors in the middle of the day. Meanwhile, at school, Junjun-A punishes herself. Thank you. Thinking about the expressions of people's faces when they learn about their recent joint adventures. They will become objects for the next gossip in the town. She does not blame him at all, clearly understanding his intentions, but also thinks of what will happen when the truth finally opens. These rumors may suffer her chances of joining college, and even worse, if her mother learns. Everything would be lost in the past, because he will not be released until the end of the war, and the true culprit will be caught. Her thoughts become gloomy when a Wandian appears, distracting her anxious reflections. It shows concern about this problem. Kwanbin is trying to become a ray of light in the thick darkness. He makes a remark that bothers her, so she answers him with words. Unfortunately, I cannot rewrite the text that only contains text in English. Please provide me in Ukrainian so that I can help with it, improve it. He began to feel sympathy for her, telling her all the things that people usually say when they can be in love. She did not even know how much everything went, but refused to be together. She tried to make careful not to seem rough, though she appreciated it. He tries to persuade. It clearly makes it clear that his proposal is insufficient. However, he is not aware of this hint. He talks about the connection that exists between her and Quanta, believing that this is enough. But she smiles, promising to tell the truth to prove his innocence, although this means that their relationship will never be as before. Moving to another place, Wan Bayamjan seems to find himself in a new environment. He enjoys the moment, counting the ceiling in the police chamber. It's been the fifth day, and it has not yet been released. This means that the situation has become a little more serious. But you know what? All is well, unless she returns to the station. She wondered how bad everything can be if the rumors would spread. Her life can be destroyed. At that stage, the truth will no longer matter. As best you can adapt to life in prison than to watch it suffer in the tenets of lies, recognizing that the camera is surprisingly convenient. But, however, he weighs his options while thinking about the possibility of fast escape to stop her from the intended. Talked to her when she came to the station of that ill-fated day, wanting to reassure her, just as his father once reassured his mother when he was still a child. Finding a place, he wanders the camera. The door is sharply opened and the officer is seeking him out, reporting the latest news of going out of the camera. It has an invisible facial expression, focused on the search for a true culprit. The officer pays attention to it, but he is not going to make friends with officers. Holidays. An elderly man invites him to make a statement. He does not lose the opportunity to talk about his girlfriend and also advises to choose a less prominent place for meetings. He jokes over the younger about he does not look like a romantic, but his secret meetings give his feelings for the same girl. The officer does not say a lot because she made a promise to keep everything secret. The officer begins to explain to her more, but Wan Baibjan stops him, letting know that you do not need to continue. Assuring that he knows the cause, she makes him think about how much she told the officer. The officer expels him from the station, promising to keep their secret, but she waved for goodbye. But he still thinks of what Junjun did. After that day, Wan Bomomjin is glowing with purity. We were stunned to the heart when we saw the hiding place in his closet. One memory returns him to the moment when his uncle handed him a pack of money immediately after his father's death. I wonder why the money in this pack never decreases, no matter how much it uses. But something else attracts his attention. Apart from the pin he gave Junjun, he regrets that he did not choose the one with a bow. But there is something in his voice that tells him that he knows what is happening to her. He hopes that she will remain calm when she sees him. Yunjun Aunt has never made so much effort. Suddenly we notice the summer couple. All exchange silent greetings. He immediately goes away, returning to the abandoned warehouse. The smell of rotten food into the nose. Only then he realizes he does not tolerate dirt. It begins to clean when the door is suddenly opened. The door opened, and in front of me appeared sweaty Yunjun, who began to catch with me. She complains that she is very hungry, but turns away as if not noticing it. Shouting and breaking it, she approaches him. She accuses him of stupidity because of his silence, being aggressive in the camera instead of just confessing in truth. Her thoughts are filled with fears about what can happen, and she constantly blames herself, promising to surrender twice in a row. This will destroy it. "You annoy me so," is all that she can say before tears break through. She brings her face to his chest and gives his crying freedom. Her eyes are filled with tears and her heart breaks. Gently hugs her, seems to be for the first time in a long time. It also becomes an important source of support for him. She looks closely at the exquisite dish in front of her. She was amazed at how she burst into tears, though I am glad that it happened, because she was so difficult in her heart. She recalls how quickly she returned to the composition after the teacher reported the news of his release. Initially, she partially regret her actions. However, the historical expression does not alleviate her suffering. Returning, he advises her to open her heart instead of rushing upon him as once. She confesses to her intentions to leave it in the past, and he steps confidently. Admiring the fact that she told the officer, she gladly answers the truth. His face becomes serious when he reproaches her for such a risky act. The decision was made, but it stands on its own, protecting the likelihood that the attacker will be able to find. Brits has never trapped. However, he urgently asks that she no longer exposes herself at such a risk, especially if this man suddenly has unnecessary words. He will say nothing that would be dangerous. He was outraged by his constant reproaches. He stated that freedom is all that is important to him, changes the course of conversation. He jokes that she dreams of him instead of studying and makes a note about the need to thank. She tries to deny it, but his unexpected question knocks her out of the panther. "I like you?" he asked. She was only lost for a moment, but immediately began to defend herself, emphasizing that his arrest was her merit, hinting that he can curse her, but we are confident in one thing. She was stunned when he confessed to her feelings for her, emphasizing her tendency to neglect. After calming down, she reflects on his confession and is interested in the causes of this act. She saw a similarity in it and asked about it, but his answer only angered her. She tries to do her best to understand the situation. He tries to remember the exact moment when he fell in love with her, but in his head empty. But he confesses that he thinks about her every minute of the day and night. From this confession, she feels excessively busy. She just looks at her palms like a confused Barbie doll. She leaves her lonely to study to make a quick rest and reports when to wait for her answer. Although, in fact, she is not a doctor, provided the first place is maintained. When they are appointed to her place, the main contender is Han T, which usually ranks second in the ranking, shouting that he picks up the words more cautiously, otherwise he can be planted again. She listens, and he hints that her dignity is at stake. He remembers the past days when he carefully engaged in his training, to the tragedy in the family. Since then, he has lost the passion to study, but recently everything has changed. And he realizes that observation of Yoon Jin-yeon begins to influence him, changing him in such a way that it is very difficult to imagine a common future with it. If, of course, there is any future. Zon, ringing the bell, notification of the completion of the exams and more. Students leave the hall one by one. Only 2 lovers remained. She confesses that she is very hungry, but he is already... I ignores her confession, telling the need to track Hintya. She smiles at his childhood, which leads to a brief dispute about her place. Silence is delayed, but it interrupts it. He tells her she is a bad man. She invites him to go first to avoid suspicion. However, instead, she says to take a few more sandwiches, deciding to follow him where he did not go to get them. She tries to explain to her why she can't go with him, emphasizing that he was recently released, which means that he will be attacked sooner or later again. He decides to abandon his stubbornness and confidently goes out. Not having time to reach the door, she asks how he is going to meet her unless they can appear together on people. Does not repeat his words, rapidly leaving the class. But he instantly catches up with her, as if he moving at the speed of light and grabs his hand. They are found in views, the tension between them increases. Break this moment. Their look does not break. He releases her hand and apologizes, and she jokes that he will threaten strawberry jam, which even flies will not affect. Her face is poured bright red. This time, when she really left the class, he exploded from the slap on his face, blames her of excessive niceness. Meanwhile, on his cheeks gradually appears a gentle blush, and at that moment, Na Sung-gun passes by the class, following the direction of Yoon Jun-yeon. He thinks if he saw something, but it is not so important because it is time for him to know her intentions. However, we are surprised to see a light smile on his face when he remembers the question she asked earlier. It is a special day that gives a sense of pleasure, and Bomji thinks, it reminds me of something. Remembering Yoon Jun-jono's reaction that night, he confessed to his feelings. Her answer was pronounced. Going the street with the many sweets he bought because they like it, she does it as a reminder for her heart. Remove her gift from the closet so he forgets. Reflecting on his experiences, he notices a black car with deep toning. Considering its characteristics, all hopes instantly scatter when he sees his uncle leaves the house. But he is in a hurry to meet, asking strange questions. Finally, he reports their departure to the port. Values remain at home, but the house for him is only where Yoon Jin-jong is. He understands well that he can't just go. He tries to keep the feeling of ink on the skin and a pleasant smell of his shirt, which is significantly different from her original idea of him. He tries to win a little time to meet her, but notices the blood ooze from his heart. Uncle's hand. Aware of the severity of the situation, he finally responds to the pleasures of his uncle, wondering how he could once think that he will be able to escape from his reality. He thinks of Jun Junant, who remains to wait for him to spend her home at night. Thoughts are scattered as soon as the call returns it to reality. Then everyone gets into the car and he asks, there is an opportunity to return, but the older man warns that this is only possible if they experience dark times. After a while on the road, he asks his uncle to stop. He notices Na Sung-gun, who goes the street. Stepping quickly, he approaches him, leaving a message about. He apologizes for his departure, pleading asks to Yonya. He hopes that he will pass the message sitting back into the car. Unrealistic words only cause even more pain. It finally comes to him. His life is far from ordinary because he froze in an impartial reality where he did not know tears. This is his new name he gained. Threats do not interfere with spending their money by overcoming shackles, without realizing her love for sweets before. And finally, he did not recognize his feelings from the beginning. In their palms. While Kwon Beom-ji is immersed in his own thoughts, Yoon Chuna is waiting for him at home. She asked him to buy strawberry jam earlier, but he disappeared for a long time, much longer than she expected. After all, she lies down, thinking that he will return sooner or later, even if she is late. In her thoughts, she matures the desire to talk to him when he finally comes home, but now she just decides to cover her eyes and relax. The dream takes her, and when she wakes up later that night, the house is shrouded in silence, and Kwamchi is still gone. She looks around, hoping to see it, but only the wasteland stays around, and she thinks where he can be. Years pass, and Yoonjun Ani is already sitting on a plane that flies back to a city that keeps memories that she cannot give up. The voice of the flight attendant is heard from intercom, announcing the approach to the international airport of the Inshot and urging passengers to prepare for landing. Jun Ayon slowly rises from the seat, removing the mask for sleep, and looks out the window. The city stands on the horizon, and for a moment it simply watches, absorbing a familiar but already distant landscape. Going on the plains, it is covered by a wave of fatigue. She pulls the phone and calls Martin, but the conversation does not get well. Their words echo from each other, but to no avail. In the end, he sighed tired, puts the phone, deciding to do it anymore. The day exhausted her, and she is too exhausted to continue. He thinks to call Nasunhun and Hang Director, but they do not answer. Twice tries to call, to no avail. So he decides to go home, hoping to relax and leave a long day behind. When she approaches her house, Nasungun, who was already waiting for her, unexpectedly stamped, as if he knew about her arrival. He welcomes her with warmth. As soon as, why did she come back for so long? Nasa Sosan notices tension and tries to discharge the situation. He asks Yoon Jun to eat, reminding her that she was probably tired because she did not sleep last night. He adds that she is the only one who does not treat him so, is the only one he can rely on. Yoon Jun-yeon listens to him carefully, feeling that these are sincere words. Indeed, Nasongun almost no one gets along with any other heirs or ordinary people. For him, she is not just an interlocutor. She is the only girlfriend with whom he can be frank. She realizes how happy he is, having such support, because he does not feel the same at heart. It is a little easier. It decides to treat them with both boos. Nasungun is raised, offering help, but she squeezes, saying that everything has already been done. She does not separate his mother's enthusiasm. He looks upset, his mood spoils, and suddenly gets up, apologizing that he feels bad. Mrs. Hong watches how the songgun goes and asks it aloud to bother him. Calling quickly, he reports that he is ready to go. She does not separate his mother's enthusiasm. He looks upset, his mood spoils, and suddenly gets up, apologizing that he feels bad. Mrs. Hong watches how the songgun goes and asks it aloud to bother him. He then returns to Yoon Jun-yonga and, again discussing him, remembers that he had a great taste. The former girl he met when he studied abroad feels that he has changed. Now different women are often suitable for him, and he does not know how to choose the right one. Yoon Jun-jong tries to clarify everything, assuring Ms. Hong that she does not cross the limits, that she and the wrinkle is just friends, wonderful friends who can discuss anything. Ms. Hong does not seem to believe her. She looks at Yoon Gin-ana with suspicion and accuses her of stirring, thinking that she is still nearby for the benefit of their family. Despite the tension, it goes to another topic and asks about health by Jun Gin-yeon. Yoon Gin-ayon politely thanks Ms. Hong for the care and they return to the meal. While eating, Ms. Hong is happy about how delicious the dish is. At the same time, Yoon Jin-ah is hesitant about the dessert, tapping it with a spoon. Then they approach the construction site, pointing to a man with a cigarette in his hands. They greet him and ask what they can help. He explains that it is here due to an accident and monitors the safety rules. He also draws attention to several problems, including the absence of a fire monitor and a damaged thread of fall protection. He emphasizes that these are serious issues that need immediate solution. Jun Jun-jung finds his appearance, behavior, and manner of communication quite strange. Calling quickly, he reports that he is ready to go. Yoon Jin-anta is not at all satisfied with this situation. She feels disappointed because she has just returned after a long absence and now goes back again. On the way to Busan, she looks into a cafe on a quick drink. Waiting to order, she mentions the head of the Sona department and his cooperation with the director of the Hong. She recalls the rivalry between the Hong In-sop, brother Hong Mi-yan, and President On Han-sik. husband Hong Mi-yan, and Nasan-hun's father. Although she is only an employee, a connection with the Kan-yan Scholarships Foundation, under the direction of Hong Mi-han, attracts attention to her. Nasan-hun, the son of the vice president, is friends with the team leader, and her open communication with them makes you feel that she is constantly observed. She undoubtedly seeks everyone to see her as a talented person to whom she helped grow. Since the Wadgun is always nearby, many believe that it will soon become part of the vice president's family. It is at this point that the waiter distracts her by serving a cup of coffee mapka. She considers herself a good girl. She was grateful to fate that no one was seriously concerned, and all the gossip would disappear as soon as the Rosengun married. In the end, the noun will still fulfill the desire of the mother, because it was always the case. She pulls her drink when suddenly notices a man passing by a cafe and her heart fades. He is so similar to Kwon Boom-ji. Without thinking, she quickly runs out and turns to him. It turns and is disappointed with disappointment that it is not him. Man, Dan asks who she is. Yoon Jun-yeon, in a confusion, explains that she has confused him with another person. He nods and departs, leaving it somewhat embarrassed. He noted that he had a superficial attitude and was more concerned with getting some compensation. Yoon Jun-yeon feels that something is wrong here when he hears how workers talk about Park Hyung-jun. It is at this point that Mr. Kim appears, and a man with white hair prompts him to approach faster. Then they approach the construction site, pointing to a man with a cigarette in his hands. They greet him and ask what they can help. He explains that it is here due to an accident and monitors the safety rules. He also draws attention to several problems, including the absence of a fire monitor and a damaged thread of fall protection. He emphasizes that these are serious issues that need immediate solution. Jun Jun-jung finds his appearance, behavior, and manner of communication quite strange. She asks her name, and after reading on the badge, he repeats aloud. Yoon Jun-eng, adding a joking shade, calls it a flower among people. He throws a cigarette and offers her a company in place. Jun Jun-eng politely refuses, explaining that he is only watching the events. He warns to be careful and take care of his own safety, noting that workers are already on the nerves. She does not like the events on the construction site, and she feels that this trip can be much more intense than she expected. Meanwhile, in the other part of the city, the man is on the couch, yawning. It was Kwon. Despite the rain, Jun-jin decides that she does not need an umbrella, while the officer who accompanies her is completely wet. Some employees begin to worry about him, saying that everything would be easier if he had agreed to meet in advance. They propose to get it inside and treat tea, but at first it refuses. Finally, one of the workers persuades him and they lead him with them, leaving Jun-jin with several workers outside. She says nothing to say until she comes to the forerunner, promising to help in any question. But instead of gratitude, she is met with indignation, accusing her of unhappiness because she is a woman. Puzzled by this, Jun Jun-yeon asks why they fall if they have so much good luck. Young explains that involving police or officials will not solve the problem. This will only waste time because in the end, it is the company and employees who must solve this situation independently. Some employees ignore her words, but others think that she may be right. Yoon-gin-eng begins to doubt whether there is a deeper problem, since there are no official comments on the security of the equipment on the facility. She decides to investigate the situation by communicating with employees in person. One of them reminds her that she does not have real power, so even if she is in defense, the company can leave it unattended. He noted that he had a superficial attitude and was more concerned with getting some compensation. Yoon Jun-yeon feels that something is wrong here when he hears how workers talk about Park Hyung-jun. It is at this point that Mr. Kim appears, and a man with white hair prompts him to approach faster. She is surprised as he suddenly became Mr. Kim. Watching his departure, he notices a scar on his back, which was not before. He asks if she came to represent Kyeonjun Park. Say it. Jun Jun-yeon believes that he has all the necessary information. He seems to be not recognizing her, but she feels a serious thing. He asks if she came to represent Kyeonjun Park. Say it. Mr. Kim smiles, saying that the place where they go will be quite noisy, so he advises to change his mind before they arrive there. However, Yoon Jun-yeon is confident that she is indifferent if it is dirty, because she has already lived in such a house earlier. Even if he disappears again, he must tell her why he was not so long. She considers it a great opportunity to finally talk to him and understands that she will be sorry if she does not use it. As she once regretted that she did not confess to him in her feelings, Mr. Kim smiles, saying that the place where they go will be quite noisy, so he advises to change his mind before they arrive there. However, Yoon Jong-yeon is confident that she is indifferent if it is dirty, because she has already lived in such a house earlier. She thinks that, despite his long separation, her feelings for him were the same as at the age of 18. They arrive at the estate and go inside. They are welcomed there by an elderly woman who asks Mr. Kim, asks who this woman is with him. He tells that Yoon Gin-aon is not long. Yoon Gin-aon seems and expresses a desire to stay with them for a while. The elderly woman is surprised and says that there are many places for living in the vicinity, but this house is old, and she will be uncomfortable. Yoon Gin-aon assures a woman that everything will be fine and asks if there is a free room. The elderly woman replies what is, but there is only one bathroom in the house. The annoyance Junjan replies that he does not understand how you can know that you know something about her without even having introduced. She throws the sticks for food and thanks for the delicious lunch. Even if he disappears again, he must tell her why he was not so long. She considers it a great opportunity to finally talk to him and understands that she will be sorry if she does not use it. As she once regretted that she did not confess to him in her feelings, she begged them to let her stay. Mr. Kim agreed, but said she should go tomorrow. The old woman suggests to show her a room that turned out to be more cozy than others in the house. Yoon Jong-yeon thanks and asks for the path that the hostess remembered, because she needs to buy a few things, including clothes. The woman shows the road, but advises you to wait for dinner so Mr. Kim can go with her, because it is too late. Young Jin Yuang does not like this idea. At this point, Grandma notes that Yoon Jin-yu is dressed in Mr. Kima t-shirt. She immediately makes a remark about it. He asks him if hot water works in his room, and he replies that not. Yoon Gin-jung comes to check, and her water goes well. Grandma calls her for dinner, and when she comes to the table, everything is ready, and everyone sits down to eat together. During the dinner, Kwon Beomji didn't even look at her. Grandma asks him to bring a young lady to the city center, because she probably needs a lot. They should eat first and then go to the store to get back quickly. It seems that the traffic light does not switch for too long. Finally, when green lights up, it crosses the road and calls Kwonbums. He rotates, looking at her, but in his eyes there is a surprise. Something clearly wrong. The annoyance Junjan replies that he does not understand how you can know that you know something about her without even having introduced. She throws the sticks for food and thanks for the delicious lunch. She goes, saying that she will not refuse if Kwon Beomji invites her to bring her. If not, she is ready to go on the road. They have a chance to get together. They go together, but the car holds the silence. Yoon Junyeon does not fully believe that he said about the loss of memory. She suspects that Beomji Kwon is just pretending. In the Yoon Junyeon shop, he is wondering if he will go with her, but he only promises to wait near the pharmacy. Junjeon asks if he really was never before purchasing a woman, warning that it will take some time. Kwon Beomji asks how much she plans to buy. He promises to complete his business and join her later. Yoon Gen-ang slowly picks up what she likes. Usually it does not spend so much time choosing purchases, but this time everything seems different. She recalls how she received support from the Hakjong Foundation as a child. Due to the high hospital accounts of the mother, their family was constantly undergoing financial difficulties. That is why she is used to choosing the most expensive options for everything. The most expensive things she had were gifts from Na Sung-gun. He bought her good things for school, graduation, and birthdays, and sometimes just when he was in a sublime mood. She has never really used these gifts. They just lie unbroken to storage because it feels burdened by them. She listens to the drunken complaints of Na Sung-gun about these gifts, giving interest. He often apologizes that it creates inconvenience. He wants to see how she uses what he gives. Yoon Junyeon thinks why the Wondeon always behaves when he drinks. She reports Jun Junjoni that she does not need to buy new pants because she already has several couples identical to those who have broken. It seems that the traffic light does not switch for too long. Finally, when green lights up, it crosses the road and calls Kwonbums. He rotates, looking at her, but in his eyes there is a surprise. Something clearly wrong. Yoon In-yeon suddenly notices that she is rushing a motorcycle. Yoon In-gat falls on a pedestrian crossing, but fortunately, she manages to avoid a collision with a motorcycle. The motorcyclist screams indignantly because she suddenly jumped on the road and almost caused an accident. It really could have had bad consequences. However, since the traffic light was green, she knows that she did not violate the rules. BM. He runs up and hugs it in the middle of the whole crowd, then goes away. She remembers their previous embrace. He examines her carefully, asking if she is injured. Yoon Haegan Aeon reassures him, saying that everything is fine. She explains that she fell from fright. There are several bruises on the feet, but nothing serious. She turns to them, saying that they do with an elephant fly because she did not even affect her. Byeomgi returns to the rider, and in his eyes you can see the rage. He looks at him with a dangerous expression. His bright brown eyes are overflowing with tension. Better looks stunning and, frightened by his voice, immediately apologizes, then disappears quickly. Pyamji carefully takes the young girl away from the road, holding her in her strong arms. They step slowly, silently, and his hands protect her as if a mother who cares for her baby, creating a sense of security and warmth. Junjung's heart is rapidly pouring, and she is not sure whether it is a fright from an accident or something else. Kwon Bimji treats her very care. He asks her to sit down, carefully examines the ankle, asks if it hurts. Junjung asserts that everything is fine. Honestly, his passionate look seems to penetrate. Although she knows that she is not guilty, his presence causes many feelings. Yoonjun Ani asks what to do with torn pants. She doubts whether it concerns the old woman. Kwon Bumji assures that it is not necessary to think about it, and insists on a hike to the hospital. Like, even if it feels well, it will not hurt to check. Yoon Junyeon, with a serious expression, says that everything was fine with her. She was just scared and fell, because she was not even affected. She adds that she did not forget about him and called for help. Ingin Yong says Kwon Bumchaj that he was acting so officially that she thought as if she had forgotten him. She had no idea to meet him in such a place. She asks how he is, and he looks surprised by her question. Kwon Baumji is silent for a few seconds, then getting up, telling her to stay still until he goes to buy bandages and medicines. Yoon Ginang stops him, asking if the best time is really for that. He insists that to take care of her health and safety is the most important for him. Finally, she feels that their meeting has become a reality after so many years. Bamji is very special for Yoon Chinant because he was her first love. He returns the memories she should forget, even if it is only for a moment. She is sad because they could create so many common memories if he had not disappeared on the day they started their relationship. All her first memories are associated with him, but unfortunately, it was not destined. She had other relationships and feelings for other guys after, but none of them. It's a little strange, but she believes that a date is a waste of time because she is not interested in knowing another person. While he carefully treats her wound and helps to tie a cut on his leg, she expresses his discontent with his hairstyle, claiming that she does not fit him at all. When assisting, he accidentally breaks her pants on his knee. She asks him if his comment on the hairstyle has offended him because he tries to show his strength. Kwon Beomji ignores her question, focusing on her injury. He warns that if she does not want a scar on his leg, then he should care well for the wound. John Young laughs and asks if he is really concerned that she can get a scar on his leg, especially after his sudden disappearance. Yoon Byun-chi asks if they can leave if she got everything he needed from the store. Yoon Junyeon replies that she still needs something from her shopping list. Kwon Be-uji proposes to buy it for her, and she is inconvenient to confess that it is underwear. It is a little shock by the Be-uji Kwa Kwon, and he stops for a moment, not knowing how to react. While they go together, Junjun Ange takes him in hand, relying on his direction. Later on the same day at the construction site, Kwon Be-om-ji thoughtfully remembers his meeting with Jun Jong-yeon. She reports Junjun Joni that she does not need to buy new pants because she already has several couples identical to those who have broken. Later on the same day at the construction site, Kwon Beom-ji thoughtfully remembers his meeting with Jun Jong-yeon. He remembers that the last time he spent time with her was at the same time of year as it is now. He is still surprised by their meeting, though he expected it sooner or later. Kwon Bai-Uz-ji quickly realizes that he really hoped to meet Yoon Jun-jung, and not just expected it. He is glad to see her, but realizes that their stratification did not occur in the place or at that time. He notices that Yoon Jin-ang did not change. She is still as fearless and confident in herself what he remembered, and he realizes that he also remained the same. Soon, the opinions of BMG moved to a man named Jenman Su. This man was his predecessor, who came down from this position, where BMG is now standing. Jenman Su was also the leader of the company, and although it is all under its influence now, he is constantly in memory. Junjun knows that on the day he fell, he dreamed at lunch, and because of that scaffolding became slippery. It makes her think that Jaina Ma-su could slip and fall, carrying something heavy. It happened absolutely by accident. At the right moment, Chief Kwan Beom-ji gave him a rest as a thank you for a good job. During his break, he enjoyed a rest and relaxed with his colleagues. Then we learn more about Yongmin Su, a fell worker. It turns out that he owed more than 170 million with a percentage. These debts have accumulated because of his passion for gambling, but he ended with her after an accident with his wife and daughter. Now it is conscientiously returning debts on a monthly basis. This accident made it impossible for him to refund. Therefore, the company was forced to look for an alternative way to solve the problem. He was about to enter his room when he heard the Chongman Su, and he was suddenly pushed from behind. It was a working incident, and the Kuvanbe Amji understood everything. This will no longer be considered an industrial injury, so it will not receive any compensation. And they needed to regulate it. To do this, he should investigate the employees to find out if they are really ruthless or they have a fraction of compensation. When a worker approaches him, the mention of the phone is reminiscent of Kwan Baumji that he had his own. Now, thinking, he guesses that he probably dropped him on the street last night when Yun Chunan helped after the accident. He accuses her a little of forgetting his phone, believing that after his appearance he became scattered. This phone was not of great value. These words struck the employee so much that he lost his language for a moment. Then he remembers. The employee, resorting to the proverbs, cheers Kunabaum Hara to harass Yunjun Jonah. He even tells that his wife was incredible beauty. When he fell in love with her, he brought a bouquet daily. A month later, she began to smile in such an effort. The employee explains that the real problem was the Hunjun Park for which they worked. This is because he did not show any interest in their affairs. It was so impressive that it almost caused a heart attack in Yun Jin Yon, but he simply ignored her reaction. His tone causes the worker by surprise. Yoon Gin Aon is at a meeting with several employees to make sure they get proper attention. She finds that all requests were, the requests of employees to repair certain things have been ignored and no work has not been done. The meeting has been going on for 7 hours, and Unjin Jong is still watching documents and asking questions. At the end, she proposes to conduct an outgoing check the next day and announces the meeting. Meanwhile, Mines Suk and other worker are already unconscious of fatigue. They are exhausted, but Junjun Ung remains cheerful, still viewing documents, and she feels that she suspects such things because he knows who Kwan Bamji's father was. Yunjun Enge is still chasing these thoughts. There is a moment of silence between them when everyone remains in their own reflections. In the end, she does not pay attention to the warning and still goes to the inspection. During the examination, he feels knee pain and realizes that he is much stronger than expected. Looking back on an accident, Jungin Ang believes that he treated her well, but she offended me, Kwan Amji. At the top of the stairs, she looks at the construction site and begins to analyze the accident with Chongmin SU. She knows that Chongmin SU fell around 2050 during a night shift. They conclude that the best solution is to meet with the Chongmin's family. She plans to do this as soon as she rests because she feels not too well. While she is thinking about it, Kwanbae Amji suddenly appears from her back as a real shadow master and asks what she is doing here. Sorry, you only submitted a piece of text. So that I can improve it, give a complete snippet or several fragments to edit. Kwanbae Uji is easy that there is a staircase behind, and she should stop dreaming and descending. Yunjun Ang is not moving from place. Hwan Boyamji is stunned by this issue before the meeting next time. He asks the following question: whether Kwani Baemji's Kwani is close to Chichue Jonboka's mentor. It is interesting to her, because the manager told that he took Kwan Bayamji under his wing and showed him how the system works. Even without waiting for the answer, she already asks the next question, Kwana Bayam. Why does he work here? Doing what he had never done before. It amazes it when it comes closer. Yunchun looks younger, like a fresh look. Be interference. After the warning, Kwan Beiji moves away from her and begins to go away. Yoon Junyeon thinks of who called. She is irritated by the unrequited call to satisfy her. When their skin faces, it feels how hot it is. and asks whether it has no temperature. Even her breathing is expressed by the state of Yoon Jun-yeon. All night she could not fall asleep because of the noise of the motorcycle. So now she is not feeling well. Once in the arms of Kwanabai Omji, Yoon Jun-yeon feels embarrassed. All she ever sought to know throughout her life except his well-being. Yoon Jun-yeon confesses that she did not know her and stops her. He reassures her, assuring that there is no need for explanations. Her confession was amazed by Kwan Baeji that day. Finally, Kwan Baeji is ready to give you something in January. But before he has something to say something, the phone of Yoon Jin-jong calls. Given the tranquility that her mother radiates now, it becomes clear that she, left alone with thoughts in the living room, she reflects on the capture of Nasungun Yoon Jin-young and how she did not expect it to be an obstacle at that moment. You can wrap them in many aspects. She is afraid that her brother Chan and CA can use the relationship of Jun Jo-lu with Nasungun. She was convinced that they were in the same hospital. Yoonjin sighed, remembering the Bae Uma Kwan, who showed excessive curiosity when they were separated. She confesses that she does not know. She is not sure that she is more important, her own health or rescue of the mother. After mother John Jun-jong faint, she watched her mother's phone and saw a bank account with 1.9 million won. She quickly found out that the score was decorated not for her mother, but on her. And she didn't even know when he was opened. Jun Ayon confesses that he is aware that it is a consequence of her fear. She does not feel comfortable in a world where no one knows who she is, how she was born and lived. For her, it resembles a sucking. And without her mother, she is afraid that even if she disappears, no one will notice it, and life continues.